Coaching Culture with Ben Herring.
Steve, what is your definition of culture?
Well, it's an overused word, I think. What is my definition? I'd probably define it as it's either good or bad. It's something that we have with us. It's the unseen connecting thread that runs through a business, a team, a school, a group, a family, and it's either done properly or it's not done at all.
And do you think, just when you reference a whole lot of things there, it's not just a rugby team, is it? It's everywhere we go, even interpersonal relationships.
Anywhere where you're trying to build a connection, I think that there's a culture with it. Like we know there's national cultures, there's sub-national cultures, there's rugby team cultures, there's sports team cultures, there's school cultures, and they're all based around the values and the way we want to live. And I think if you went to each of those individual groups, they'd all come up with the same values. And that's the trick of getting a good culture, is actually living those values, not finding the values, understanding, yes, that's what we want to do and how we want to live, but living them daily from the top down, not the bottom up.
Right. And do you have a couple of set ones that you think are universal specifically?
I've got, I guess, I do. There's things that I would call non-negotiable for me in a sports team. I think the team is first and the individual is second. That doesn't mean to say we don't care about the individual, because we do. One of your values has to be to value and care and love other people that you want to connect with. However, what's the thing that's greater than all of us individually that we want to connect for? So that's got to be, for me, when I was coaching the All Blacks, or now at Toyota, it's always been team first and the individual second. So it allows you to make tough decisions around what's right for the team or the group, the business or the family, rather than getting caught in the emotional side of the individual.
That's sort of, I remember you saying once to me, I think it's your quote around, if people aren't fitting into that culture that you create and want, you can try change the man, but if you can't change the man, change the man. Is that sort of the end of, if someone's not fitting into the environment and you've done your best to love them and make it work, and you just can't, is that kind of the end game? Is that where the culture is more important, that we don't compromise that aspect?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I've used the quote. I don't know who I heard it from. I would have borrowed it off someone else. But if you can't change the man, change the man. So our job as leaders is to try and help people, see that what they're doing isn't quite right, and it's not the way we want to live as a team or as a family or as a business, as a group. That person then either wants to be part of that group and understand that, or they don't. And if they do, then we're duty bound to help them and steer them and direct them in the right way. If they're not prepared to change, then you have to make a decision. Do you want that person in your group? Because what comes with living those values is trust. And if you can't trust somebody, then for me, I don't care how great a performer you are. If you can't trust them, then I'd rather have someone who's half as good, but I can trust 100%.
Just when you're talking about getting them to essentially buy in, you're good at the narrative and around that, some of that storytelling around that stuff. Is that that's kind of a motivational piece, right? To try sell the values. Do you think that's an important aspect of coaching, is to actually try sell the culture, to try? Or do you think it should be a bit more inherent?
Inherent's a big word for me, Benny.
Yeah, I can send you the show notes afterwards, Steve, and put a definition there for you.
Yeah, that'll be good. For me, I don't know if it's about telling a story around it. I think it's more giving the individual and your group the opportunity to disagree and then commit to the values that the group want. And I know for myself, if I throw out, okay, what do we think about this? Do we want to live like this? Do we want to live like that? And then the majority say, yes, we do. Then, okay, what does that look like? What does it feel like? what will we see? And then, but if you don't agree with that, then you're never going to buy into it if I don't, as a leader of the group, give you the opportunity to debate it or to discuss it. And it's not an argument. It's just you having the opportunity to express your opinion and say, well, no, I think this. And it might mean that you subtly change some things because people hear what you're saying and agree with you. So what you get in the end is a group of people that have either said, right, I 100% agree with that, I'm doing that, or you'll get a small group of people that said, look, I don't agree with it, but I'm prepared to disagree and commit because the majority are saying that's the way we should live. And the important thing about what comes out of that is if it's proved to be the wrong way, then we've all failed. But if it's proved to be the right way, we've all succeeded. So there's no I told you so's either way. And I always find that honesty and vulnerability, and we could all write them down on a whiteboard and come within 1 or 2 or 3 words that are, we could write 100 words down and would all be pretty much similar. That's as we want to, and you see them all the time in the big businesses. They write them on their wall, and you see them in the sports teams. That's not the hard part. The hard part is having the discussion around, okay, what does it look like, and how do we deliver on those things, and then agreeing and committing to them on a daily basis. And as I said before, it's got to be so good if you're at the very top of that tree and you're not living them, and then you're telling everyone else they should be. People say, well, hey, Ben, you're not, so why would I? Yeah. Hey, Steve, you're not, I. So, yeah, look, and there'll be times when people within your group make mistakes, and that's just human life. You deal with those, but the expectation is this is how we're going to live the majority of the time, and it's hard to try and do that.
And do you think, you said there about like if the majority agree and the minority disagree, we continue. But at what point, like if we take that back to the family sort of thing, if the majority of our family decided we want to go to McDonald's for dinner, we'd be doing that every night because that's what the majority. At what point I would have to say, or my wife particularly, as you know, would say, we're not doing that, and put your foot down and be quite bullish. At what point in this sort of stuff in a culture would you, as the head of the operation, go, actually, fellas, I want this to happen because I know best? Is there an element of that which is important to have as a leader in the group?
Yeah, well, I think what you're describing is not that's not culture. That's an expectation. Like if we had an expectation that we're going to eat at McDonald's all the time, well, okay, is that healthy for us? And no, it's not. So, okay, let's have a discussion around the idea of doing that. Then why isn't it healthy for us? And we educate and we show people, okay, we can go to McDonald's maybe once a week or once a month or whatever we're comfortable with. But certainly there's going to be a consequence if we go every week, every day, every night. So we're not doing that. And you're steering them towards that through education, whereas the culture is more around the unseen things that, do you want people to be able to have conversations with each other? Do you want people and be safe having them? Do you want people to care about and value each other? Do you want an organisation that values the work ethic of its people rather than just expecting it to be happening?
Yeah.
And you find that when you have those values ticking over nicely, your environment's a pretty good place. It's humming and everyone's connected and the work ethic is extremely strong. And it's not, look, it'll never be perfect because life's not. However, you'll have been in places where when that's happening, it's a great place to be. And when it's not happening, it's just a bloody nightmare. And
is it all subjective? Can you measure, like when you're talking about it's a nightmare, like is that just a gut feel on the culture, like it's not working, it's not right? Have you got any specific measurements?
I think there's measurements like, are people turning up late? Are people respecting how we want to conduct ourselves? Yeah, I think you can measure that. Like, do they have pride in their work? Do they actually have pride in the organisation? Is their behaviours reflecting our values? So they're measurable. It's not a measurable thing, though, that you would say, well, okay, there's 5 out of 10 people doing it, because then you can see that there's people that aren't, and then that tells you your culture's not quite right. Something's missing. Why is it missing? and you go searching, for the answers of why it's missing. We've got people turning up late all the time. Well, why? And then you either address it or you don't. And if you don't address it, then there's more creepage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So you've almost got to stamp it out from the outset. Like when you see a standard that's been breached, if you walk past it,
yeah. Well, that's the same
worse.
About all the time, isn't it? Every standard we walk past is one we accept.
Yeah. I've heard you on it. Now, it's specifically, Steve, around culture in Japan at the moment. How are you finding that transition? You've been there a number of years now. Like, it's a different place. It's a interesting culture, fantastic culture, harder to crack, slower to crack. Traditionally, everything's a little bit more set. The culture is very different. How have you found that yourself? How have you adjusted to coming from where you've come from to then into a Japanese company team?
I think the subculture is the same everywhere you go, and then the subtle differences are, things that come from your society and the makeup and the history of that society. And Japan has some wonderful, wonderful traditions. They're wonderful people. They're kind. They're caring. However, there's some traditions they have that get in the way of them actually making some progress for their young people. I think they've used the traditions in a way that they've not been intended for. You think about the senpai and the respect they have for their senpai, the university system. And it's like if they were playing against them, they just about don't try because they don't want to be seen to be better than the senpai. And I've talked to a lot of our young players about that in recent months and said, well, the greatest respect you can show that senpai is by showing him that you've learned all the lessons he's given you and be a better player than he is. And it's a little like father and son. Like the one man in the world that wants, your son to be better than him is your father.
Yeah.
And whilst we all do it in different ways, that's really what we want. And when we understand that, and when I talk to these Japanese boys about that, they actually, there's a light goes on in their eyes and wow, I've got permission to actually show him, because they really want to. They really want to be respectful, and I love that about it. And sometimes, poor leadership creates poor environments, and sometimes if you allow the age thing, which is a big thing over here, I always find it interesting, and I'm lucky, I guess, because I'm 65, so I'm older than most of them anyway, but if you're younger, you can't talk to somebody who's older and be more authoritative, or, your idea doesn't work. For me, that's not a healthy situation. I think you have to have robust discussions that are heard, but are robust in that fact that they challenge us to be more flexible in how we think and how we operate in our environment, so we get the best of what we're after. So we don't waste time going down dead end roads, because I can hear you, just because you're younger than me, I can hear you tell me, well, that idea is going to end up looking like this, and is that what we want? And, me being flexible enough to hear that and go, well, no, it's not. So maybe we should scrap that and let's move up. What else have we got? Or even turning a good idea into a great idea, because people in the room who are dealing with the issue that you might be talking about are adding to it. So we don't all have the answer, but we all might have part of it. And if we can add all those parts together, we get a great answer. The society here, I do love it. But there's little things that subtly we try and change. Like you go out for a drink and you see them put their glass lower than your glass because they consider you to be higher in the pecking order than they are. So I love taking the mick out of that. I always take my glass to the very bottom.
I've seen you do it.
Yeah, but some of them, they don't like it, but we joke about it, we talk about it, and we go, well, here I want us all to feel the same. We're just as important as each other, because we can't make this thing better if we can't all feel like they invested interest in it.
Yeah. I think, Steve, one thing I really enjoyed the way you'd done when you just talked then about subtly trying to change it. Like, having been in Japan a while myself, I've seen a number of foreign coaches come in, and including myself at times at the start, where aggressively try to change it, and it falls flat in your face because it's too big a jump. Would you recommend, like in any culture, but Japan being the extreme version, that a subtle culture change along the way is probably better long term? Like if you just try to say, right, don't worry about if someone's older, if they're the senpai, just treat them as is. If you try to bring that in too early, that just would fall a bit flat. Sorry, mate, you still there?
Yeah. Yep.
Mate, the internet dropped out here. One of the kids leapt on the something, mate, and blew me out. But that's okay.
No worries. Well, we're just talking about how to approach the different cultures, and I was lucky enough, and I say lucky enough because it was a privilege to be able to coach Wales. And when I went there, I was a hell of a lot younger, and I was probably like a bull in the gate, and I wanted to do it the way, we did things in New Zealand, because I'd come from the Crusaders, and Canterbury NPC at that time was still very, the NPC was still really, really strong, and all the All Blacks were still playing in it. So we'd been very successful. And so, you fall into the trap of thinking there's only one way of doing something. And you just can't change things just because you want to change them. You have to have people want to buy into that change, and it takes time, and you have to respect it, and there's a reason why their culture is the way it is. So respect it, understand it, work your way around it. And if you work together with people and take them with you, then you're going to get there. But if you try and bludgeon them, it doesn't work, and there's been times when I've tried that and it still doesn't work even today.
Well, you said something like just around that Wales transition, Steve. I remember you said something to me after a series of losses we had, which always stuck with me. You said, we have, with the All Blacks, you had the record for the most consecutive wins at the time, which in effect made you the greatest coach in the world. But people forgot the backstories. When you're with Wales, you actually had the most consecutive losses in a row, which effectively made you the worst coach in the world. And I really I thought about that in the process, and I was when I was thinking about this and the cultural pieces, I don't imagine your actual X's and O's of rugby changed a lot, but what I presume changed a lot in that time period was the delivery, the art of coaching, some of the subtler cultural pieces that you're talking about now. Would that be is that just the experience of time in? And is that true?
I think so. I think if you're not learning as you're getting older, then you're not doing anything, are you? You're staying still. And I'm pretty sure I'm a better coach now than I was when I first started. Well, hopefully I am. And you learn through success, but you also learn through your failures. And I think the biggest failure of all is not doing anything. So we can't be scared as leaders of trying things, but as you go along, you've sort of got to work out, look, how do I want to do this? Do I want to empower people to do their role, or do I want to be a dictator? I think over time, you become more of an empowerer because it lasts longer. Success will last longer once you get it. And, like you're talking about the two records, really what you're talking about is perception, because the fundamentals of coaching are the same whether you've got a great team or not.
Yeah.
However, what is success? Well, one form of success is lifting all the trophies. But if you're a team that haven't done that, and there's reasons why you haven't done it, it might be you don't have enough talent. It might be because they just never going to, because they don't have the money to spend, whatever it might be. Then you've got to find other ways to be successful, and that's helping young people, athletes, achieve things they couldn't achieve before. Young coaches seeing things that they couldn't see before, staff being better at what they do because you've played a small part in that success. But ultimately, scoreboard success is what everybody judges us by. But only one team can win the World Cup. Only one team can win the Japanese Premiership or the Welsh. So you've got to find ways to to make sure that you're having success.
What happens, Steve, when you don't get success? Because that's kind of the measure of a lot of things. Like, it's very easy, like, to say everything's going well when you're winning. But where do things go when you're losing? Because when you lose, everything gets questioned, everything gets put under the microscope. Like, in terms of like the cultural piece, like everything's like pointed the finger at your warm up's not good enough. Yeah. That's the old test when someone complains about the warm up. But what is losing? How does that stress your culture and your values?
Well, it stretches it because everyone's not going in the same direction. If you can, all the people that you have working for you, whether it be a business or a rugby team or whatever, they're arrows in a box, and the arrows are all going in the same direction. So when you're winning, it's pretty easy to keep all those arrows heading in the same direction. But when you're not, what happens is those arrows start turning around on themselves, or they start going down, or they start, because they're starting to lose faith in what we're doing, or we're starting to lose the connection, and we're starting to lose the trust. So then it really challenges our culture. So that's when I think you've just got to be sure in the direction you're going in and be clear about it, communicate it, make sure that your group's coming with you, and then try and find other things that can show the group that you are improving, you are getting better, you are being successful. Okay, we're not winning, but we are getting better, because look at, once upon a time we couldn't do this, now we can do that with our eyes shut. But it's really, really difficult. It is difficult. Like, it's the hardest thing. And I found when I was in Wales, and I didn't want the players to feel the pressure. I just said, I was used to winning. I'd been in environments where we won all the time, and I'm a very competitive person, as you know, and I would feel it losing more than most people. I just doesn't go down well with me internally. However, I had a group of young men who didn't have any self-belief, so I had to believe in them, and I had to keep making sure that external factors weren't knocking them all the time, because when you're playing that higher level, you're under constant scrutiny. Well, you know what it was like at Toyota. Like, there's huge expectations to be successful, and sometimes those expectations don't have a lot of reality attached to them.
And do you just have to be, how do you get through that? Because it's tough going sometimes when there's that pressure coming on and like everyone questioning what you're doing.
Yeah.
And to actually stick through it and just keep your ship pointing in the direction you think is right as the leader. That's just tough, isn't it? Is that just something? How do you weather that and get better at that?
You gotta have the odd inconvenient conversation with someone that you trust, to make sure. Okay, well, I want you to tell me if you don't think what I'm trying to do here is right. Let them have the opportunity to tell you. Also have people that you can just go and vent to. Don't let it bottle up. Just go and, I don't need you to give me any answers, any solutions, because I know there's not. I just want to get this off my chest.
Yeah, that's what partners and people at home are for, aren't they, Steve?
Yeah, well, that's good to be able to do it outside of the house too, because you start bringing it home, and I challenged myself not to do that. I didn't want to bring it home. I wanted to be able to walk in the door and just be Steve.
Yeah,
and I think that's important too. But having the understanding of, right, what is it that's causing me this pressure? And for a long time as a coach, I was naive enough to think that I didn't feel pressure. But that's bullshit. I do, and even still do today. The pressure of wanting success is something that I feel all the time.
Has it changed though over with age?
No, it's still there, and
you just disguise it better.
No, what's changed is I understand that I have awareness that it's there, and therefore when I start to feel it, I have a plan.
What's that plan?
Well, the plan is to not get outcome focused, is to keep working on the process, to keep having a plan to not bring that pressure. And, what are the shows that I'm under pressure? I'm a bit sharp, I'm a bit grumpy, trying to keep them away from the house, and, the family, and just try and be normal. Do exercise more than that I normally do, which is not very often. So now I'm going, every day. Now it's got a bit cold probably every second day, but trying to do things that I know help me get through the barriers that cause me pressure. Everybody feels it because we feel it because we care. We care about things, and we have an ego, and our ego, the reason that we're good at what we do is because of that ego. So you don't want to lose the ego. You just got to be able to try and master it. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes it gets in the way. And, when it does, then you sort of go backwards a bit, and then you've got to make a whole lot of apologies to people and then start again. But
I like the way you said a whole lot of people.
Usually when you get to the point where the ego gets in the way, you're knocking around a whole lot of people. You're not just one or two. So, but don't get me wrong, it's not about not having one. It's about making sure you're using it to your advantage as opposed to it's using you to its advantage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So the ego is essentially keeping you on edge, keeping your focus, keeping the care, but you just need to manage that so it doesn't become an unruly beast.
Yeah, you don't become a prick, and arrogant, and because that's not who you want to be. So understanding who you want to be is important. I remember us talking about that one day, and you made the comment to me, and I thought it was brilliant. You know who you want to be, and that's who you're trying to be when you're when you're doing things, and particularly when you're talking to people. And I think that's wonderful because it keeps you in check, and not all of us keep ourselves in check as much as we probably should. So I think leaders, it's okay to have one, but just make sure you keep it under check as best you can.
Yeah, I guess that leads me to this, Steve. I had this mentor, a young mentor, when I started up years ago, that said, you don't always know what you want to be as a coach and as a leader, but it's often easier just to pick one thing you don't want to be, just to narrow it down. And I found that a really useful piece of information for leadership is the analogy is there's a candy shop, and when you, as a kid, you're looking at all the options and you just don't know one to pick. And then you say, well, at least pick one you don't want to have, and you pick that licorice all sort. And then that's easy. It's really clear. And then you can just go, right, well, that's helped. I was told that as a leadership thing as well. There's so many different types of leaders. You can get caught up on all these things you could be, but just start with what you don't want to be. And I loved it. So I'd had a couple of things which I just didn't want to be that sort of guy. And then I just said, well, whatever I'm doing, just don't be that. Have you ever had, well, when you started off, or even as you've gone through in your career, have you had anything where you've gone, actually, I don't want to be that specifically?
Yeah. Well, I was lucky to have some wonderful people coach me. Some of them were terrible, but they were still wonderful coaches because they taught me what not to do. And when I started coaching, I sat down one day and actually separated them into groups. And those are the qualities I like in that person. Those are the qualities I do not ever want to do from that person. And funnily enough, sometimes one person had qualities and bad qualities. But what I worked out was, I don't want to ever treat an athlete like that because that's how I got treated, and I know I didn't like it. And I still do to this day work on that theory. Okay, if I was this athlete I'm about to have a conversation with, how would he or she want me to deliver this message? And you come to realize that as a player, a lot of coaches can't have the hard conversations. So they're not quite as honest as they could be. And I don't think you have to be brutally honest to the point where you break the athlete. I'm not saying that, but you do have to be honest. And if you're not picking them, then why aren't you? And be honest about that.
So if it's a flip of the coin, 50-50, you simply say it's 50-50.
Well, I had that conversation one day with Angus Gardner, who was an outstanding player for Canterbury, flanker. And him and Scott Robinson were both playing 7 at the time, and a year later I shifted a raise to 8. But both of them were outstanding. I think Angus Gardner should have been an All Black, and Scott Robinson was. So, we had 2 very, very good players in one position, and you can only pick one of them. Razor was playing well, and so was Angus. But this particular game, I don't know why. I just felt that Razor's style would suit his opposition better, him starting and Angus coming off the bench. And when I sat with Angus to tell him he wasn't playing, I told him that. I said, look, I can't tell you why I'm not picking you. Not because you're not playing well, because you are. I said, but so's Razor. And I just feel in my gut that, and for this, I can't explain why, can't put it in words why. I just think his style of performance will better suit him starting this game. And he said, well, you can't do that. You know, there's got to be a reason. I said, well, do you want me to make one up, or do you want me to be honest? I can make it up if you want, but I'd just be telling you bullshit. And he looked at me and he goes, oh, well, no, I don't want you to make it up. I said, well, okay, well, I'm not, can I? I wasn't anyway. I've just told you why, and I don't know why. I just have a feeling. And, you know, the next game he started, and then you're having conversations with Razor, and you're talking to Razor about why he's not being picked. But as a player, when I wasn't, like, I spent a lot of time in and out of Canterbury teams over a long period of time, and I don't feel like I really got told why. You know, and the simple answer was someone was better, but they couldn't tell you that, you know, because that's quite a hard conversation. That one day I got told to go down and train with the team, and I asked if it was just for the day, and they said, yeah, and I ended up walking over there and got named for the rest of the year as the captain. But little things like that, they as an athlete, they break you. Breaks the trust you have in the person you're dealing with.
Mate, I just love how deliberate you were in that, and they actually drew up a list and put half that side and that side, and actually was really, really deliberate about it. Would you say your leadership on that front has been equally deliberate around, I want to be, you followed through with, I want to be X, Y, and Z, not... I
would say I've been pretty deliberate about how I want to drive things, like, because it's who I am. I've tried to be just me. I'm not trying to be somebody else or something else. If I just do me and I do me the best I can, you know, let's see where it goes. But if I try and be somebody else, I'm fudging it. Yeah, I'm going to stuff that up. I'm better to be me and be wrong than try and be someone else who I don't know how to be, and stuff that up. Then you know, oh God, why did I do that? You know, I'd rather stuff up just being me. And look, there's been plenty of times that I will have stuffed up. Don't worry about that. However, I would rather fail trying to do something than fail doing nothing.
Well, that's very clear in coaching with you, Steve. It's the mark of you. I reckon you're prepared to. This is what I think. Let's roll it and see how it goes. It's cool. Well, I actually have one more question, a couple more questions about this sort of stuff, Steve, and as particularly around, you just mentioned before around those hard conversations and you don't want to break people. Like, for me, having that time with you, what I enjoyed on reflection after leaving was some of our morning meetings where they got quite heated, some of them, and I know you love the robust debates. And when I look back on those times, I actually know it's helped shape and grow me as a coach, because it's given me a bit of a thicker skin to be able to front up against yourself in an argument and do my best to fight my way through it. But I know you're good at it in that space, but how would you recommend that coaches, when they want to stand up for what they will believe in, how do they argue it? How do they go well in those sort of confrontational times? Because I think it's a big part of leadership, and to get further up the ranks, you need to have a degree of, this is what I want, this is what I'm saying. How have you done it, and what do you think about that?
Well, the first thing is to look at it not as an argument. You know, it's just a strong conversation, and it's stronger as you get more determined, and you know, it's not personal. And it's sharing your belief. And there'll be times when I would have got frustrated with you and Rhino, and it sounded like it was personal. I hope you both understood that I cared about you, and therefore it wasn't personal. And like, you don't have to be right, but you want to know that the other person is what they're thinking. And when, you know, I'd get frustrated if I thought I got nothing back. You know, I'm not talking about you guys, but just talking about any conversation. If I get nothing back, then I'm second guessing what that person's thinking. And that, like, there's nothing worse. Like if you're talking to me and you're asking me my opinion and I give you nothing back, it's a hard old day for you at the office. You're sitting there, well, I wonder what he's thinking. Yeah. and then you don't get the opportunity either to say, well, actually, that's not a bad idea what he's saying. Maybe I have to change. And then it's about, okay, we get to a point where, right, we just don't agree. And then you're saying to yourself, well, why am I not agreeing with him?
Yeah.
I'm having this conversation. Why am I not agreeing with him? Because I've been there and I've done that, I've experienced that, and it didn't work. And why won't it work now? Because the same inhibiting factors that won't allow it to work are still involved in whatever it is you're doing. So you know it doesn't work. So, and you're in a situation where you want the other person to see that. So then it's about getting them to see it. And if they don't, then you have to decide, right, what are we going to do here?
Yeah, as the leader.
And that was the thing I found difficult as director of rugby as opposed to head coach. Because when you're head coach, you've got the mandate to say, right, well, we can't agree here. The majority are saying this, so that's what we're doing. And if the majority is just, 1, 2 people, then I guess it's the guy who's got the mandate. When you're the director of rugby, you're really there helping guide the head coach because it's his mandate to do what he really wants to do in the end. And probably didn't feel like that at times with me, I know. But
well, the other thing, Steve, which I think is a really good skill set of yours, is just around the ability to read people and know when to push, when to pull back, when to hug, when to wave the stick. How have you grown that side of things? I know when I first got to Toyota, you talked a lot about the IQ, the EQ, the AQ stuff. And is that something which you've delved into for your own leadership, is understanding the different types of people and how far you can push people? Is that part of your leadership?
Well, for me, good leaders, they have some form of IQ. They have that.
Yeah.
But it's not like, if you can think of an iceberg, it's the tip of the iceberg is the IQ. Underneath it is how you can manage the people that you want to lead. And like, you're not born a leader, but people choose you to be the leader. They'll choose you because they'll look at you in the moment. Okay, what do we need to do here? So, and you can never rise above the opinion you have of yourself. So you've got to work out your own faults. And I guess, understanding that the past doesn't have to equal your future. Like, the past is the past, and you don't always have to be like that. The future doesn't mean to say you're going to be like that. The future is whatever you choose it to be through your development and your actions. So, but what have you learned about the past? Well, I've learned that when I behave like that, I'm faking it until I make it. So when I see that in an athlete or another human being, I know they're faking because I'm comparing it to something that I've done.
Can't bullshit a bullshitter. That's the quote.
Well, that's the quote, but and it's true. You can sniff a bullshitter out, a million miles away. However, there's another thing that I think that helps you lead well, and that's your ability to adapt on the run, and that's what they call the AQ. So your adaptability. Okay, you're going down this path, but you're reading the signs and go, well, this is not, I'm not going anywhere with this, so get out. We need to change tack here. Like, I was lucky, I was brought up on a farm, and animals teach you a lot about body language, because they can't talk, obviously, and they're dangerous. If they get angry, you don't want to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, we're a dairy farm and you're dealing with big animals, so you don't want to get hurt. So you're watching all the time, what's the body language? And then I started probably doing it with people. And, you can see in how a person holds themselves, how they're feeling. You can see just where they are with their confidence, with whether they really believe. And I got taught early on, I guess a little bit through the police, a little bit through my father, mainly about asking questions. Why, what, who, when. And everybody can answer the first question, everybody. So I don't believe the answer to the first question. So if I'm not sure and I don't know you really well, I'll probably ask you another one. And then if I don't know you really, really well, then I'll ask you probably 2 or 3 more. No, I don't. He's got it. He's not faking this. And like over time, you get, okay, when Benny tells me that, I know he's got it. And when Johnny tells me that, okay, I need to ask Johnny a couple more questions because I know in the past he hasn't really got it and he's too scared to ask. And that's not his fault. Something in his upbringing has made asking questions or asking for help really difficult. So I have to help him get there. That's my job. Does that make sense?
That does, mate. It's would you say that's quite a nice little mantra, isn't it? Don't ask just the one question, like the follow-up question of
well, just don't assume that they know in depth just because they answered one question, because most of us can answer the first question.
I love it. Righto. Well, hey, Steve, mate, I'm really enjoying it, but I will just start to wrap it up, mate, because I know you've got a lot of prep to do for the weekend coming up. I'd just like to finish up, mate, with just privately, what does success look like for you? Because we all know, like, winning trophies, all that stuff, most coaches are competitive, so we know what publicly success looks like, but I'm really intrigued to see what keeps you going privately. How do you define success for you, like, privately? Have you got any little things which just keep you on the even keel despite whatever stresses, whatever else is going on with on field? What keeps you privately?
I guess the thing that keeps me motivated to still be coaching now after such a long time is the same thing I really loved about coaching when I first started, was just being able to be amongst a group of like-minded people, for one. The camaraderie is wonderful, having a bit of banter. But the biggest thing of all is being able to say, I played a small part in helping that person achieve something they wanted to achieve. And seeing the joy that person gets from, to me, that's success in its own right. That's the most successful you can be. I often think athletics is a wonderful sport because if you're running a race and you run a PB, it's really easy to say, well, I've got better. I've done the best I can and I've run last. But it doesn't matter. I've done the best I could. And that's an achievement. If we all did that every day in our life, what a wonderful place it would be. But we can't. So but we can strive to be better. And if we strive to, and you play a part in helping that person who's striving really hard to be better, and they are, just that brief moment that they are, it's a joy to be part of it. And you're not sitting there jumping off the highest mountain in the world saying, yeah, I did that, I helped him. It's just a wee subtle thing, knowing, I know I helped him today. That's good. It's been a good day. You can't have a wee biscuit and away you go.
Or 2 or 3 biscuits, right? Or a couple of, and a ramen or 2.
Yeah.
Steve, hey, thank you, man. As always, I love our conversations together, and I really reflect on our time standing on those fields behind the boys running around, chewing the fat about things other than rugby. Really are my most favoured memories of you, mate, and also just some of the stuff I went through with you was really good for me, Steve. Like we talked briefly about those sort of robust conversations. When I look back on those now, those little bits of joy for me, I actually get a lot out of them. I felt I grew as a bloke from some of those conversations, and highlighted areas which I need to have spelled out to me pretty bluntly. So it's been really good, mate. And I feel like I've advanced as a person from your presence. So thanks for the last couple of years, but also just your time as always. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for.
Well, it's been a pleasure,
again.
Pleasure, Benny, and it's a pleasure being able to call you a mate. So good to see you, and hope things keep going well over there.
Coaching Culture with Ben Herring.